Hello and welcome to Reality Check. Before we get started this week, I wanted to tell you a little bit about our sponsor for this week's show. Imagine having the same personal trainer as the boss. Personal trainer to the star, Tony Horton, says he's found a much more effective way to help you fight age-related muscle loss and even build new muscle. He's trained celebrities like Bruce Springsteen, Tom Petty and Stevie Nicks, to name just a few. And he's now using his body strengthening method to help thousands of Americans remain healthy and active as they hit middle age and beyond. He's the subject of a short new video report detailing how his method works. It's free and online right now for you to watch or share. Simply visit tonyprotein.com/Ross. We'll link to that video below this video. Again, that's tonyprotein.com/Ross. Now, let's get on with the show. Hello and welcome back to Reality Check. Well, this week we've got a very special guest. We've got Tony Harris, the host of The Proof is Out There, a show that investigates the world's most mysterious videos, photos and audio recordings and uses the best technology and experts to render a credible verdict. Tony is an Emmy Award-winning journalist and filmmaker, and since 2021, so that's probably coming up to 4 years, he's been the host of The Proof is Out There, which has become a hugely popular show on the History Channel. He's previously been an anchor with CNN and Al Jazeera. He's also a podcaster. His show, Monster DC Sniper, is a true crime podcast doing very well, reaching number 3 in all of podcasting in 2020. Welcome, Tony. Good to have you here, sir.
That's a wonderful introduction. It's so great to be with you. Thank you for your patience. I know we've tried to make this happen for a bit now, and we're here, and I couldn't be happier. Thank you.
So, Tony, I wouldn't be doing my job properly unless I asked you the question that I think is the issue that is the enigma for many people with journalists. Where do you stand on the anomalous phenomena that you report about?
I have never believed we're in, this galaxy or this universe alone, and you know better than I how many galaxies are there out there, how many universes are there out there. I've never felt we're alone. We may be the most significant of the planets in any universe. We just don't know that at this point. Imagine what math and science had to come together, what creationist vision had to come together in order for our atmosphere to have been created to support life in the way that it does on the third rock from the sun, right? That's a fascinating thing to think about. And yet I just know that there is so much more for us to understand and so much more for us to learn. So, I'm pleased to be on a vehicle to explore an avenue of journalism that this great craft has taken me into this area. I never expected to be here. I never expected to be reporting on anomalous phenomena. But here I am, and it's been a great ride, and I'm just so happy that so many people around the world now have joined us for it.
Now, Tony, you and I are hard-bitten news journalists.
Yeah.
We've been in newsrooms in major media organisations. Am I being fair when I say there is a stigma, a taboo attached to anomalous phenomena like UFOs, creepy things like the paranormal, ghosts, Bigfoot? I mean, there is a taboo, isn't there?
Absolutely. And I don't know about you, but I bought into it. I really did for a long time. And it occurs to me now, it's just because I didn't have enough understanding. I didn't have enough knowledge. There was so much more that was beyond me at the time. And I will tell you what was interesting for me, kind of this transformation. I can remember being a kid working one of my earliest jobs, and I was a busboy at a restaurant in Baltimore, Maryland, my hometown. And I can remember being pulled into the Star Trek world. I think I owe Shatner a debt, so it's kind of crazy and weird and odd, and it gives me the goose flesh sometimes to think about the fact that I'm on a channel with William Shatner, and oftentimes I think even in this new season that is rolling out, his show leads into ours. So to think that years and years and years ago, I'm watching Shatner, and his show Star Trek is what really sort of opened my eyes to this entire world. And then finding my way into journalism and hearing all of the skepticism and reading it, how pervasive it was around this idea, this notion of anomalous phenomena and UFOs, UAPs, and that's the province of weird Uncle John who's in the garage, and we slide him his meals under the door, and he's Mr. Tinfoil Hat Guy. So to find myself in a position now where I'm taking a look at this as you are, a skeptical journalist, and searching for more evidence, and evidence gets us to proof, proof gets us to truth. It's a fascinating sort of evolution in my own personal journey in this space.
You've talked about how inevitably, because of the Fermi paradox, there must be civilizations out there. There must be intelligent life out there in the universe. But the thing that strikes me about The Proof Is Out There is that it's a show that quite blatantly suggests often that there is anomalous phenomena right here on this planet, that we're being visited by some type of non-human intelligence, that there are perhaps paranormal entities like ghosts, Bigfoot. Where do you stand? Like,
Yeah.
what's the level of proof that we look for? I mean, the thing I'm increasingly thinking as a journalist is how you're right. I'm as guilty as you are. I was in a newsroom. I can remember coming to my editor with a photograph of a UFO that a lady had taken over her washing line. And this is a major newspaper in Australia.
Yeah.
And the editor said to me, he said, "Roscoe, we don't do stories about UFOs.
Yeah.
They're BS. You don't do stories about UFOs." And
Yeah.
I bought that. I accepted that you don't do that. And yet this woman had taken a perfectly clear photograph on a film camera, which we developed out of the camera. So there was no chance for her to have meddled with the film. Why is there that stigma? I mean, a lot of people suggest to me that we were got at, that, there's some dark men in black force that's going around shutting us down and stopping us. But I don't think that's the case.
Not either.
I think it's just a stigma, isn't it?
I don't believe that for a moment, but I think you've hit on something with that photograph from X number of years ago, right? And the reaction of the editor in the newsroom. I think you've hit on what ends up being the conceit of our show and the reason that we even exist. Look, all credit to the folks at the History Channel and them being willing to go, where other channels and other shows dared not go years ago, with The Unexplained, with Ancient Aliens, and exploring what had been talked about in quiet corners, but had not been brought into the open. Okay, so those are the shows that predate what we're doing. And then the next bold step by the History Channel is, so we're going to create a show that takes a critical look at myths, legends, and things that go bump in the night. And more than that, what we know our audience likes, is interested in, wants to know more about. So is there a way for us to create a show that, in essence, super serves that audience and takes a more critical look at the myths and legends and what's true, and asks those the questions, and then tries to get to the bottom of that? So all credit to the History Channel for that. Um, and you take this on, and the only way this show works is that people have been willing to, in essence, play along with us, to say to us, "Hey, look, I captured something. Take a look at this. I can't explain it. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's something. Are you willing to take a look at that?" We also know, and you know this, the staples of our show and the work of anyone in the space, you included. The staples are Bigfoot, Loch Ness, what military pilots are capturing, right? What's in our seas? What are the strange things that are in our seas that we don't yet know about because we haven't gone 5,000 leagues beneath the sea, right? So those end up being the staples of our show. They hold us up, and I am really plain about this. They provided us with a bit of a cushion. We were able to do this wonderful thing that History Channel does is they take the historical record, they update it when they can, but they're always able to take you back and revisit that historical record. And when we get a new clip, when we get a new story, we can update that record. So yeah, those are essentially the conceits of the show. The pillars, as we mentioned, and then the willingness of the audience to say, okay, I see what you're doing. Your format is you're going to take what we send you, and if it passes a particular threshold, you'll put it on the air. But more than that, you're going to apply some rigor. You're going to bring experts to the table to take a look at this. And then you're going to do the really either crazy thing, insane thing, or the smart thing. We'll see how many seasons we're able to keep the show interesting and informative for people. But we're going to pass a verdict. We're going to tell you what
There's a
we think.
there's a great line that I think describes well the way a lot of establishment science responds to anomalous phenomena, and it can't be, therefore it isn't.
Yeah.
And I suspect the mainstream media. I want you to put your pointy head hat on for a moment.
Yeah.
One of the things I worry about is now that I've gone down the rabbit hole of UAPs in particular and anomalous phenomena,
Yep. Yep.
I'm increasingly finding scientists who acknowledge privately that there is a scientific basis, especially with quantum phenomena, to explain potentially some of what has long been described as anomalous phenomena, including perhaps spirits, ghosts, Sasquatches. You know, there's talk of interdimensional portals.
Yes.
There's talk of, even David Grush, when I did the interview with him, the intelligence whistleblower in
How did
2023.
I miss that? Okay, I need to see that. Oh, sorry.
Sure. David basically acknowledged that perhaps one explanation for the phenomena is that it's interdimensional, that it's not extraterrestrial at all.
Yeah.
I just want to ask you, do you think there's a risk for mainstream media, knowing the volume of the audience that's interested in this subject, that if they don't engage with this subject, they're going to lose the faith of their audience? I mean, I'm genuinely concerned that great institutions like the New York Times, the Washington Post, a lot of mainstream television, they don't want to engage with this subject. And I think as a result, they're alienating an audience that, as a wisdom of the crowd dictates, they think there's something to it.
I think you're going to be happy with what's developing in the States. All of the mainstream media certainly covered the congressional hearings a few years ago. I think the turning point for me, because when you get approached to do a show like this, and you've kind of made your bones in mainstream journalism, you one of the things that at least runs through your mind is this something is this a real subject area? Is there real journalism going on here? I'm going to look like a knucklehead for delving into this space. Just stay in true crime, stay in documentaries, and make your bones there. But the one thing that convinced me that there's something here is when more and more mainstream outlets started to cover this. I remember seeing reporting about this in this topic, right, in the New York Times, and I'm like, whoa, well, wait a minute. If it's in the New York Times, the Great Lady, then okay, maybe there's something here. And so I think that more and more mainstream outlets are devoting time to it. I'm seeing it on more and more television shows and news shows and news shows. I think that I'm seeing storylines that incorporate aspects of what we do, right, of the area that we're in. More and more storylines are popping up in scripted television. So I think whatever genie had been long locked up and whatever stigma was being applied to people who were delving into the space for a long, long time, I think that's been largely removed. I think there is enough skepticism out there to keep us all honest. I think we all want the clear, definitive picture of the Yeti, right? Of the inarguable, right? The Bigfoot, the skunk ape, right? We all want that. And but what I think has been is that the public consciousness on all of these areas has been raised to a place where I think we're going to gather more and more evidence of this. We'll get to proof, and then we'll get to knowable truths in these particular areas of concern for us.
Now, this week you've got a brand new series of The Proof is Out There. What can you tell us about the new series?
I love it, and there are a couple of reasons. I know everybody comes on and they talk about their show and they say they love their show. I'm going to tell you why I love our show, and one of the reasons that I love the series that's airing now is that it is a more balanced. One of the things we hope to do when we do this kind of work is get to a place where a show where we don't have the first season looking over our shoulders and self-consciousness about the show. We are what we are, and even in the beginning, you're not quite sure what you are. But we're in the season 4, whatever, wherever we are. When you see the show this season, I think you're going to see a far more settled show, a show that really knows what it is, that has received the buy-in from the audience, so that we're operating with an embarrassment of riches in terms of the content we get to pick and choose from. Um, I think, for example, our premiere episode is a great example of the kind of balance that we can now achieve with the show.
Can you tell us what it's about?
Well, absolutely. We kick off this episode with the long legend skunk ape that legend says still to this day can be found in the south and southeast quadrants of the United States, whether it's New Orleans and Louisiana, whether it's in Florida, that the legendary skunk ape is alive and well and thriving and can be found. It's a perfect opportunity for us to do what we do best on this show. We get some recent video, in many cases, new video. Some of the new video is actually being directed to us now, and we get to take a look at it. It passes the first threshold for us, which is that it's interesting video. Not many people have seen it, or if they have seen it, the comments are rife with debate, and we get to dive into that debate. The second threshold that it has to cross for us is there a historical thread to this story? And as you know, there is always a historical thread to anything that speaks to Bigfoot and Yeti and Sasquatch and the skunk ape. So the history on that is clear, and we get to update that history. The third threshold, that the bar that has to be cleared, is when we send it to the experts, are they interested? Is the video itself interesting? Does it provide them an opportunity to tell a story? And do they think they can get to the bottom of it? And them getting back to us and saying, I'm not sure we can get to the bottom of it, that works for us. That works for our show. And then the last hurdle, can we come up with what we feel and everyone agree on? What is a compelling verdict on this clip? That's our show. And the skunk ape story, the video in our first story in this premiere episode of the show, gives us an opportunity to show off, and flex our muscles as a show a little bit. And that's why I love that. The other story that I'm really kind of keen on, there's been a bit of an evolution for me as I've been working on this show. I just find myself gravitating more and more to the science, right? The people that we have on the show, whether it's Michio Kaku, and all of his smarts as a physicist, and all of the experts that we have, whether it's our audio analyst, our video analyst, and our tech people, they've brought me along for the ride in a way that I've just become more and more interested in the science of this. So we dive into this controversy where people seem to want to debunk the idea that there were rovers that went to Mars and sent back these amazing pictures that we were analyzing, and everyone wants to take a narrow view of this or that or the other and critique it and say, there's a femur. What is that? Is that a lemming right there? Is it right? Is that a rodent? What is that? So, and they want to say, aha, you know how the people that we know and comment in the space are quick to point out what they think is a failing of our show or a failing of the research or the hoax being perpetrated by the government in this case, you didn't send rovers to Mars. This is some soundstage in Hollywood, right? So I love that because it gives again, a moment for our experts to really flex their knowledge. And so I love that story because I find myself just getting a little nerdier as we go here in these various seasons. And I find myself being drawn to the science and wanting to know as much as I can when we get these moments about the science behind them.
You've talked about the structure of the show. It's got this format where you have experts who analyze and sometimes they disagree.
Yes.
I'm wondering, what are the shows you like the most? Every now and then you'll do a debunk show where you'll say, for example, 4 UFO hoaxes or, Bigfoot hoaxes. And what rates better? What do you think the audience wants most of all? Do you think they want to see their biases proved, that there is this anomalous phenomena? Or do you think people actually enjoy seeing rigorous investigation? Do you feel pressure, I guess, at the heart of all of this? Do you feel pressure to satisfy an audience by showing something to be anomalous? Or do you think people actually want to see this stuff rigorously investigated?
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful question because I think initially when we were talking about the show, I will acknowledge there was a bit of concern and I voiced it and others voiced it that we would end up being purely a debunking show, right? Yeah, I don't know that that's a lot of fun, right? Particularly when you're asking for people to buy in and you're asking for people, to offer up their views and thoughts on a video that they've sent in. So I don't know if that's a lot of fun. Uh, But I'm happy to say it didn't. It wasn't very long before we realized that we were getting not only clips, but that the historical record was full of stories where there were real questions about the Patterson Gimlin film, and there were still questions for us to explore about that film all these years later. So that concern quickly went away. But in terms of audience taste and what I think they might prefer, I've never been really concerned about that. Uh, I know that we get enough clips in the course of a year that we end up with a fair amount of clips that our folks can't explain. Now, they may not be able to explain it because the quality of the video doesn't allow us to explain it, or we may not be able to explain it because we're not sure what it is, what the light source is. We've got a light pillars story in the premiere episode. So there are times when we can't differentiate between a sky lantern and something else, right? There are moments, but we generally know the category that this thing falls in. But there are enough videos where we can't be definitive about this that we end up having a pretty good balance. I don't know what the ratio is, but I got to tell you, I think one of our real strengths and strong suits and responsibilities to this genre, to this space, to the people who take this very seriously, I see it in the comments, is if we come across a fake, a hoax, we have to call that out. And I will tell you, as we've gone from season to season, the pressure on us to get that part of the show right has increased. I don't have to tell you, the technology is getting to a place now where you can make amazing, deeper.
Tell me about it. That actually takes me to my next question, which is I was sent this week. Everybody would have seen it. It's a picture of a beautiful little child sitting in a boat in the Carolina floods. And it's such a heart-rending picture. It's a little girl cuddling a puppy. And I looked at it, and the person who sent it to me said, "Look again." And then I realized it was AI.
Yeah.
And they then sent me a picture of the same image, but it was a little boy this time holding the puppy. And it made me realize how easy it is now using AI to generate heart-rending, powerful images, emotional images that play to our prejudices.
Yeah.
And that's the next question, I guess, which is how do your experts figure out if something is an AI image? I'm constantly getting sent high-resolution images of incredibly complicated-looking spacecraft hovering over international cities. And it's clearly, I mean, I have to always default to the assumption that it's an AI-generated image these days because some of them are just absurd. They're so sharp. But isn't there the risk that we might be throwing the baby out with the bathwater?
Yeah, I think I got a couple of thoughts on that. Yeah, it is. It is absolutely. We take it as a real responsibility on this show. We have, for lack of a better expression, we've created this monster of a show where we've told people we can determine what is real and what is fake and what's a hoax. It's in our tease material, for God's sakes. So we brought the pressure upon ourselves, and I'm happy to say that I just think we have an amazing team of people. So far, we have not been fooled, tricked, or anything else. But to your point, the fakes are getting to be so good right now that we have got to be extra vigilant. I think we're up to that challenge. And the other thing I think I'm proud of with the show is if we ever get it wrong, if we ever need to take a second look and revisit it and say, we kind of muffed that kick, right? We'll go back and we'll say so, and we'll give another team or our team a second look at something. Mick West has done that on a couple of occasions, disagreed with our verdict and said, damn it, I'll show you that I'm right and you're wrong. He's done that. But that's the kind of freewheeling show that we have right now, and kind of our dedication to try to get this right. But it is a huge challenge for you. It's a huge challenge for us going forward. It's a huge challenge for the audience. I think even in this episode, this premiere episode tonight, we've got a couple of situations where we're able to call it out definitively. But I think at this point, we've gotten to a place where folks are trying to fool us. And in part, that's a bit of a compliment, right? We're a successful show. We're taking on, all comers in this space. So for folks to try to purposely, trick us or whatever else to get the aha on us, you're not as good as you think you are, it is part of kind of a pat on the back to the success of everybody who's worked on this show for so long and so hard now.
There's a know-all fringe among the sort of the community of ufologists in particular, but particularly across the whole paranormal spectrum, who confidently assert that shows like yours, including I spoke once to Brandon Fugel from the Skinwalker Ranch series, and I said to him, people say your show fakes stuff.
Yeah.
And he actually said categorically it's written into the contract that we will not fake stuff and people will be dealt with if they do. Under no circumstances are things faked. Do you have any guarantees on your show that there's nothing faked?
I have, let me think about that. I don't think that there's anything in my host contract that says that. I will tell you, I would be surprised. I would be surprised if that was even necessary with our show. Honestly, they're a different show. I love that they believe so passionately in the work that they're doing. But, for us to get it wrong and for us to fake it, I just imagine the backlash on that. I just imagine the reputational damage to all of us. So that's why I say to you, I don't know that there's language. I would be surprised if anyone felt it was necessary. I know there's no language like that in my deal with the channel.
Sure.
They asked me specifically. They said to me, I said, look, I'm going to come to this thing skeptically. And they said, that's what we want. That's why we're calling you. So no, my executive producer is one of the best. And so I would be really surprised if that language were anywhere in any of our working documents. And certainly, there's our mission statement doesn't allow for anything like that. So, but I understand, in this day and time, if we're talking about, having to vet stories and clips that might be faked, I understand the question, and I'm not offended by the question at all. Not at all.
Sure. So you actually did a special edition on the Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah.
And did you get to go there yourself?
I did. So we've jumped out of the studio a couple of times. Once, and both of them have been kind of in an assist to those really good shows. The fact is, Skinwalker didn't need any help from us. They were huge hit to begin with, so it was kind that they thought there was something that we could do together and invited me out, and it was a terrific time. And I got to meet the guys, and I got to see how they go about their work, and I love how passionate they are about what they do and how they believe. I think they are skeptical as well, and I don't.
Did you see anything anomalous?
I didn't. I wasn't there. I wasn't there long enough, and I wasn't there at the right moment, right, to see something. And I don't think I'm trying to think of whether or not they were even in production at the time. I think they did this as kind of a special for us, right? And it didn't fire up, all the rigs that they have and everything else. But we had really wonderful conversations with them, and they let us walk the grounds. And it was a way for, I think, the audience to see where they operate and how they operate in a different light. And it was an opportunity for us to toss through some really good clips from our show that people have sort of said, hey, let's see that again. We kind of did the same thing with in Florida for the Bermuda Triangle show, which is another really hot show for History Channel. They're just producing hit after hit. And I think we did a week of shows there, or at least a couple of episodes there, that we think really showed off the team, their work, and it gave us an opportunity to feature some of the clips from our show that are tied to the Bermuda Triangle as well. So that was a really good opportunity. I hope we get more opportunities to do that, not just for other shows, but for our show as well.
What's your take on the Bermuda Triangle? Having been there, seen it for yourself, looked at the historical evidence, what conclusion have you come to personally?
I think there are gravitational forces in our atmosphere, and I think that there are moments when perfect storms align. We have wonderful meteorologists on our show. Juan Hernandez is the name that comes to mind right away, and I think that some of this is really possible, right? I don't know to what degree this is natural forces. I don't know if these are extra forces. I don't know if we're talking about pilot error in many of these instances. But I mean, there's too much in that space that's gone on for decades, not to be curious about what similarities there are in these stories. So part of the thing that I try to do with all of this is to keep an open mind but remain skeptical.
One of the things that I learned early on in my journalism career, ironically covering court cases, was how bad humans are
As
at
witnesses.
being witnesses. I was amazed in court cases, often murder cases that I was covering, and witnesses would totally contradict each other on basic issues like the colour of clothing or the location of a person when the terrible incident happened.
Yeah.
And it made me realise that we're very unreliable, that one of the problems we have, all of us humans, is we fill in gaps.
That's right.
And our brain finds solutions to discoordination by filling in the gaps and coordinating things that may not have happened. Is that a problem? Is witness evidence a big problem for you guys in trying to figure out whether something's credible or not?
Well, think about how our format essentially teases that out. So our format says, send us what you've captured. Send us what you can't explain. Don't try to fill in the gaps in your knowledge with speculation. Send the clip to us. Let us take a look at it. We'll give you a call. We'll sit you in front of a camera and we'll have you walk through your experience. One of my favorite parts of the show is when we get people who have sent in clips and then, are willing to sit down and talk about their experience, because it's that human exchange at that point. They're essentially saying, hey guys, hey Tony, hey team, I captured this. I don't know what in the world this is. Would you please take a look at it and tell me what it is? So our format sort of, teases out this idea that you don't know, you think you know, but it's probably explainable. And what I love is that when we offer up the verdict to whoever has sent us the clip, 9 times out of 10, they're willing to accept it. There are times when they've pushed back, but they're willing to accept it. I love that people come to us with genuine, curiosity about what it is they've captured, right? And you hear it sometimes in the expletives that we beep out in the clips.
Yeah, it's funny. I was looking at a lot of your Proof is Out There videos, and one of them that really sticks in my mind that expresses this dilemma about the credibility of
Yeah.
witnesses, how on earth you make that judgment. There's one, a father and son, you might remember this one, in Quincy, Florida in May 2012. They shot video of a loping primate looking creature on a thermal imaging camera in the woods in Quincy in Florida.
Mhm.
And the father and son had gone out on a search for the Bigfoot. So, just as a sort of an evidential thing,
Yeah.
how much, for example, in a case like that, does the fact that they went out looking for the
Purposely
Bigfoot
looking.
and that they happened to find one, they were clearly already believers, does that colour your perception of how the video comes to be analysed?
No, not at all. Not at all. What I love is, we're both journalists. That's how we made our bones, right? And so that doesn't color our. We were able to sort of. It's really sort of the bedrock of the show. That the show has to be viewed as being, honest in this. It has to be viewed as a show of integrity, or we're off the air. I mean, how many times do you think we can get it wrong? I mean, just flat out wrong. How many times
Yeah.
do you think you know what I'm talking about? How many times as a journalist can you just get it wrong before?
Well, I think quite frankly, often. I mean, I think this is one of the things I think we in the mainstream media often aren't very good at, which is
Mm,
publicly correcting our mistakes. I
mm,
mean, I can remember having arguments with a boss at a major newspaper and saying we should really correct this. We're actually wrong. They
yeah,
went, oh bugger
yeah,
that. And it annoyed me because I think people respect you more if you're rigorous
yeah.
and honest and
I
say,
don't.
look, I just screwed up.
Well, I will tell you, I don't give us that much rope. I mean, I don't give us, three strikes and you're out. I just don't. I think, what we're saying is uh, to trust us. That's what we're saying, and so we will take a second look at a clip. We've had instances on the show where people have said you got it wrong. They're not saying to us you were sloppy. They're not saying to us that the your experts, are no experts at all. No one's saying that to Kaku, right? And so, there are times when there have been real questions, and we've taken a look at it. I mentioned a couple of times when Mick West has said, "Yeah, we've got debate on the show, and people can honestly disagree about a clip." And then, that's kind of left to me and our team to say, well, where are we coming down on this? And there are plenty of instances on the show where we've said, we're not sure about this.
Well, actually, that's one thing I was going to do with this Bigfoot one, the Quincy, Florida one I was talking to you about. It actually got me in, and I liked the way your show dealt with it
I was going to
because,
ask you, how did we deal with it?
well, the structure was interesting because you had Steve Cull, who's a Bigfoot investigator,
Yep.
and he gave the story credibility because, of course, there's been a history of sightings of Bigfoots in that area. And then you had a professor of anatomy who came on,
Yes.
who said
Jeff
it's
Meldrum.
very likely
Yes. Yes.
very likely not a human in a suit.
Yep.
And I hadn't thought about this. It's because they said that because it was a thermal imaging camera, the black thermal signature indicated that it was a proper object. It wasn't somebody dressed up in a suit. And then you had a wildlife biologist, I think Stephanie Manker,
Yes. Yes.
and
Yes.
she said it looked like a primate. And you even talked to an anthropologist who looked at the walk, that kind of classic Groucho walk. And what I liked was that at the end, you kind of threw your hands up in the air and went, insufficient evidence.
Yeah.
And you do that occasionally. Sometimes you just admit, look, we just don't know.
So there are times when people think of that as a cop out, right? But listen to how you just described our process. I mean, listen to the people who we brought on as experts to take a look at this, and they've disagreed. And that's what I love about the show. And if we get to a place where we just can't say with any real confidence, I love that we're not afraid to say that, right? And that ends up, I think, winning us a lot of credibility points with the audience. At least I hope so.
Well, I'll give you another one that also got me
Okay.
because I had been fooled by this video, and you guys showed me how it was not a real video at all of anything paranormal. And it was a show you did called Five Freaky Paranormal Occurrences. And it was a police chase video of a car that appeared to drive through an intact fence. And, it seemed to dematerialize through the fence and drive off into the forest. And the cop car video appeared to show this car had gone through a solid fence. And I can remember seeing this a few years ago, sitting in bed with my wife and going, wow, get a look at this. This is incredible. And what you showed was the local sheriff had gone back and done an analysis. And it turned out that on that particular part of the fence, the wire was on the opposite side. So the car had actually gone through the fence. The wire had lifted up, probably scraped over the top of the car, come down again. So that by the time the cop car got there,
Oh,
it
wow.
looked like the fence was intact.
Oh,
I just thought it was brilliant. I thought it was great.
well, I love that story. And, forgive me for not remembering, how we dealt with it, but I love that we dealt with it in a very smart way. One of the things that we're thrilled about is that we're up over 100 episodes now. Right? I mean, it's a wonderful thing, but I love that you're describing our process and that you've watched the show and you know how we approach it. Um, we get videos like that a lot. The other thing that we see a lot is people thinking they're seeing. I think there's a example of it in the premiere episode where this phenomenon called pareidolia, where people see kind of what they want to see in an image, in a cloud, this, that, and the other. It's one of our most occurring videos, and it also shows you how our minds work, right? And in many of the videos where pareidolia is at work, people are seeing images of spirits and Jesus and this sort of thing. And one of the things I love in the show is when people's spirituality and their sense of faith attaches itself to the videos that they're sending to us, and then that becomes a little sensitive when we take it apart in the way that we took apart that video of the car and the fence and everything else. And then it's left to me to say, I know what you thought you saw, but it's not, and I'm not questioning your faith or your belief structure or anything like that. But it's one of those moments that I really love about the show, and that intersection between what people really firmly believe in their hearts and how it attaches to what they believe spiritually is one of the things I love most about the show, and one of the reasons why when we can, and the video is really good. The Stigmata videos are I know something that really resonates with the audience.
It's funny. I did a story many years ago about Mother Mary MacKillop, who was given a sainthood here in Australia by the Vatican, and I was very, very skeptical about claims of paranormal phenomena. But what struck me was seeing the process of how the Vatican
Yeah.
investigates alleged paranormal phenomena. And I was blown away, basically, by how rigorous the science was and how determined they were to find hoaxes and to rule out the possibility that this was somehow faked. And I have to admit, at the end of it, I sat down with my crew, and as you would know, Tony, the most skeptical people on the planet are film crews.
Yes.
And the cameraman is always telling me, you can't believe that person, Ross. But in this case, they were completely of the belief that this was a genuine miracle. And we'd all basically had our beliefs and our biases jolted. Have you had that experience yourself with
Well,
particularly things like stigmata and
yeah,
Vatican
yeah.
claims?
I love that story because that's something I have not had that opportunity to actually hear or watch the Vatican work through that process. Um, I would love to do that at some point. That sounds really, really fascinating. I have not had that experience. I have not. I can't say that I have, but I'm also
Is there
fascinated by it.
i- is there some area of the paranormal, of the mysterious, that you've not yet investigated that you'd like to delve into? What's the area that intrigues you the most?
I will tell you the area of research that I really love, and you've heard me talk about this one area where people's faith and what they see and what they believe kind of collides with the physical world. I love that. I love that stuff to pieces. The other area of exploration that I am really intrigued by is what's really beneath our oceans, and how far can we ultimately go, and what's down there. I mean, what ecosystems are down there? I, it'll feel alien to us. It may not be extraterrestrial, but it'll feel alien to us. And so I think I would love more exploration of the depths of the sea. Someone asked me the other day if you could skip dimensions, if there was such a vessel that was created and you could skip dimensions, would you be willing to do it? Would you be willing to sort of leap into another galaxy? And would you be willing to go through a black hole and this, that, and the other? And that took me right back to my Star Trek days, right, as a kid. And I said, yeah, I think I would. I'm a man of some age now, and I've lived a really good life and had a world of experiences. And, I think I'd like to do that. I'd like to explore, strange new worlds. I would love to do that and hopefully be able to report back on it. But if not, if that's where the journey ended, I'd be really happy with that. I mean, and that I would not have said that before working on the show. Not in a million
One
years.
of the one of the things I respect your show for is the fact that you do change your mind. I mean, you do invite the audience to come back to you and challenge. And I think, to confess an interest here, I think you may be aware that Reality Check has a particular interest in the subject of UFOs, UAPs.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because, for me, a turning point journalistically where I thought, crikey, there really is something to this. There was a whole series of roadblocks for me, moments or road signs where I realised this is real. But for me, it was the ODNI report, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. And I noticed you acknowledged this in one of your shows, that to have the US government, after years of denial and dismissiveness towards the UFO phenomenon, all of a sudden they're coming out and they're saying, yep, turns out UFOs are real. Yes, they are a flight safety risk, and yes, they are a potential national security threat. How important has that been for you and your show in terms of making your focus, if you like, on doing more UFO-focused stories?
Well, it is one of the staples of the show from day one. I don't know when we started this and started talking about the show in 2020 that we anticipated there would be congressional hearings on this. I don't know that we did. We knew that there was work going on. We knew that the late Senator Harry Reid was really pushing this area of investigation, the former senator of Nevada. So we knew that there was work going on, but I don't think we could have anticipated open hearings to the public. I don't think we anticipated those meetings, points in the open session where there was mention of some material or of a clip where the next thing was, well, let's take this up in closed session. That's the moment, right? Let's take this up in closed session. So
just yesterday, there was a guy who was a former deputy director of the Director of National Intelligence, of the Office of National Intelligence, and he admitted that when the spooks and the Pentagon came in to give a briefing to the Director of National Intelligence on the UAP mystery, he was asked to leave the room, and yet he was cleared to the highest secrets in the country. Yeah. There's something there, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just a matter of time. Now, look, I sort of gird myself a bit here. and the journalist and the skeptic in me says, there are a number of reasons, and this, why this material can go into closed session. And one of those reasons is because we're talking about military secrets.
Sure.
We understand that. And I've seen enough of this material, and you've been working in this space for longer than I have, so you've seen even more of it. To make note of the coincidence that a lot of these sightings are in close enough proximity to military installations where you've got to ask some questions about that. So I think ultimately a lot of this material is knowable and is knowable to, the military and those higher up in the food chain. But I think even in that subset, I think there is still material that the government is dubious of, has real questions about, that may be the intelligence of other nations, but maybe possibly extraterrestrial and alien in nature. Again,
A lot of
yeah, I don't think.
a lot A lot of people scoff, forgive me for interrupting, a lot of people scoff at the idea that governments are capable of hiding secrets.
Purdue.
You probably know the term, to put it politely, in my office when I was taught to be an investigative journalist, they told me always assume a screw up before a conspiracy, that conspiracies are highly unlikely.
They're not smart enough to cover it up, and yeah, they're not smart enough to. Yes.
But isn't the truth that governments can cover things up if they want to? I mean, there's been shocking things that have happened. I remember reading with horror about the radiation experiments on American citizens, MK Ultra, the CIA's illegal experiments on American citizens in the 1970s. There are things that are done by governments sometimes that are plausibly deniable, often in the name of national security, that are kept secret from the public. I guess at the heart of the UFO mystery, do you err to the belief that it's possibly foreign adversarial technology, or do you think it is possible that what we're talking about is a non-human intelligence?
I'm not there yet. I am. If I'm on a scale, I'm I'm leaning more toward military applications, something based in science, nations being competitive with one another. But that's scary enough.
And I think that's a good point, Tony, for us to conclude on. The fact that the host of The Proof Is Out There will remain a determined skeptic
Yeah.
until he's got the evidence in his face. Tony Harris, thank you so much for joining Reality Check, and good luck with the new series of The Proof Is Out There.
Ross, brother, what a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you so much for your work in this space. And of course, thanks for having me.
All the best, mate.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And please don't forget to click that red subscribe button to ensure you get more of NewsNation's unbiased and fact-driven news coverage.